Awesome. All right, so we'll get started, ladies and gentlemen, with our special guest here today. We're going to go through a brief introduction, and then we'll dive right into our conversation with our special guest. Veg Expo is entering its 7th year in Vancouver, BC, with increased popularity and growth year after year. Veg Expo receives about 20,000 attendees each and every single year, hungry for plant-based education and, of course, plant-based food. Last year in 2019, Veg Expo introduced a food truck lounge alongside their 200 vendors, which had attendees eating their hearts out in between listening to some of today's most inspiring and knowledgeable speakers. Next year's 2021 Veg Expo opens up in Toronto during Veganuary on January 30th and 31st, and back to Vancouver for another 2-day event at the Vancouver Convention Centre on May 29th and 30th. Veg Expo is Canada's premier plant-based and sustainable event, bringing together businesses and community. This event is a celebration of all things plant-based and sustainable for the health of our people, our planet, and the animals we share it with. Operating from a deep love of faith and compassion, breaking down the stigmas and myths that many people encounter as they transition to a better way of eating, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome the owner and Chief Relational Officer of Veg Expo, Stevan Mirkovich.
Thank you. That was very kind, Justin. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here today. Sorry I'm joining you from my car, but such is the life I live. But nonetheless, I hope you can hear me. I've got a great connection. I can see you all fine folk. It's really great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. We can hear you loud and clear. So welcome to Veg Networking, Vegan Entrepreneurs Group. Networking, a place for plant-based professionals to connect and collaborate for a brighter future. So we understand that there's 2 things that kind of were a precursor to your origin story of finding the plant-based lifestyle, and one being a sports injury, and then I believe that another one was the birth of your first child. So with that being said, do you remember any specific books or information when you did transition to plant-based that really caught your attention?
Yeah, totally. I read a lot. And the book that has stuck with me, it's like 15 years old now, believe it or not. 17 years old? Oh, mercy. So I've been a vegetarian since I was 18, which was just after the knee injury that you referenced there, the sports injury when I kind of destroyed my right knee. And I gained a lot of weight really quick because I kept eating this very rich Eastern European diet. And like literally gained 60 pounds in 1 year. So, you hear people like lose a bunch of weight in 1 year. I gained it. And by the time 2003 rolled around, I was nearly 90 or 100 pounds heavier, even though I'd already transitioned to vegetarianism because I knew it was healthier and was toying with veganism on and off for about 18 months until I finally pulled the trigger in 2003. And then I had to deal with kind of food addiction issues. Okay, but to the book. The book is what you asked. Eat to Live by Dr. Joel Fuhrman, published by Little Brown, was an absolutely game-changing book. It introduced me to the concept of a nutritarian way of eating. So rather than just thinking about foods in the ways that I'd kind of grown up thinking about them, mostly just taste and texture and recipes, etc., it got me thinking about like caloric bang for your buck. And I thought, I like that idea, like what gives me the most caloric bang for my buck? And so, I went down that road, but realized that I had a lot of other little things to kind of work through. So I kind of dabbled in what I call now mostly junk food veganism, but it was kind of rooted in my addiction to food. I used food to cope and didn't realize that and didn't totally pull that together until that second moment that you were referencing there with the birth of my firstborn, who's now almost 13. And he was about 18 months old and was running and, I was chasing him around the house and I was like just totally out of breath chasing him around the house. Even though I wasn't at my heaviest, I was maybe like 20 pounds off my heaviest, but I was still like, I'm only a 5'11" frame and I was 230 pounds, size 46 jacket, size 40 waist. Like I was a big person. You look at me now and you see this jawline, like I didn't know I had a jawline. Like I didn't know any of this existed. You can look at my before and after pictures and you just be like, is this the same human being? So I lost my first 50 pounds in 2011 and kind of maintained that for quite a while. And then in 2016, just decided I would actually cut the last little bit of stuff that was kind of holding me back. And then that was Dr. Greger's kind of influence there in 2016. I just realized, there's a few more changes I could make that would really, I think, get me to where I wanted to be. And then I couldn't keep the weight on. Like I just was eating like a horse and it just kept melting off. And that's the last, I don't know, that was 4 years ago now. So mostly for health, this vegan origin story. For me, it was health. And then I worked my way into environmentalism and I worked my way into animal rights, kind of thinking through it. And now it's even bigger. It's like an entire worldview. It's deeply profound connection. There's even, I don't want to sound too woo or anything like that, but I think that there are some spiritual, transcendent, kind of like esoteric elements to the whole thing too. Like it's a lot. It's really so many things to me. But it all started with like blowing out my knee and gaining a lot of weight and just like, how do I regain a sense of health?
Well, Steven, it's a wildly, eerily similar plant-based vegan origin story to myself with my left leg injury out of a marathon ballooning up to 60 pounds in a year. So it's very eerily similar. It's totally
wow, crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And when you talk about the esoteric, not woo-woo to me, I'm sure we've all seen the picture, so in terms of your entrepreneurial origin story, was there anything before Think Green that made you start Think Green? Like, what was your entrepreneurial origin story?
Yeah, so in terms of actual business and taking on risk and finances and all sort of the traditional definitions of entrepreneurialism, it really was manifested in a nonprofit world. I am a minister, an ordained minister, the United Church of Canada. I've been an ordained minister and kind of lived in that Christian realm and still do, still have a faith, and started all sorts of projects, but they were not your classic business sense where you're taking on a lot of risk potentially by trying to get something going, but I learned sort of the art of innovation and how to take an idea and make the idea come alive, and mostly just working with people, right? That's sort of the heart and soul of the nonprofit world and the kinds of work that people that are involved in that kind of more humanitarian approach, which is why I'm still very drawn to social enterprise. And I love the whole idea. I don't care what you call it, conscious capitalism. I don't like labels, but the people that want to engage the world that they encounter in a way that leads to everybody's flourishing, sort of this positive sum approach, and stepping away from that dog eat dog competition kind of conception of how we need to engage with one another or engage with business. Really, I can probably tell a story from like grade 6 when I, helped to change the bylaws of the school to allow middle school students to vote in like student association elections, and helped sort of rally people together. And again, it's not bringing a product to market and helping people find that product and buy that product and those sorts of things, but it is an idea that's being birthed into the world. So I've done a lot of different things. I've started a lot of different kinds of events, and it's in my heart to do things and to be creative in that way. And so I'm actually very new to business proper, in that sort of for-profit world.
Well, that is definitely like a spark in grade 6, rallying the troops to change the laws, so to speak. So those are the great little moments when we ask people what is their entrepreneurial origin story. These little kind of offhand things that happened when we were really, really young, which to your point, demonstrates your care for people in the community and the way that you kind of had that spark light up. So absolutely amazing. Now, granted, this is a really, really loaded question because of the current times that we're in.
Yeah.
But when it comes to your industry, have you noticed any trends?
Well, I mean, the whole event industry at large, so not talking about vegan trade shows or anything like that, but just events that are big and supposed to be experiential. In particular, are kind of an event where people are like Veg Expo has been described as a feeding frenzy, a sampling frenzy, where people just go and they eat and they try everything all in one day, which is amazing, and that's really the magic of it in many respects. Everything's been on hold due to COVID, but I think some of the things I've already sort of alluded to. Just I think the plant-based world is trying to ask the questions about what does it mean to be human, what does it mean to be more humane, even in the way that we do business. What does it mean to be collaborative and genuinely care for everybody involved, and seeing the space, particularly because plant-based businesses are so cause-driven, and I'm so deeply resonate with that. I needed another project, like I needed a hole in the head. I don't need that. I probably definitely one of my growing edges is learning how to curate my time. Look, I'm in my car right now. I'm delivering sourdough bread because I love baking sourdough bread, and I've got a cafe project that's coming to fruition, but it's a social enterprise, and I'm working with the city of Vancouver trying to get that off the ground. And so there's a lot going on. And so, but again, just to sort of say, in terms of the trends, I see a more collaborative spirit. I see people deeply caring about a lot more than just business. And I think that's really beautiful. And I think it speaks to the fact that veganism and being plant-based is rooted in relationship, and you don't have to be plant-based and vegan too long before you realize the interconnectedness of everything and how we show up in the world. And I think that's a beautiful trend. And I hope it means that this whole industry can continue to set some goals and some markers that other people can, in other industries can look to and say, oh, wow, it's interesting that orientation that plant-based business owners have, or those who are advocates and involved are really trying. I even see it away from that sort of vitriolic, although there's still a lot of that in veganism, that sort of vitriolic opposition to anything that smacks of, some kind of an animal product. I find even that's been softening in the sense that people realize that it's another human on the other end there of that argument, and no matter how much you disagree with them and their lifestyle, you need to treat them with love and respect. And so I think that whole trend is really great, and I'm really happy to see it.
Yeah, compassion for others and collaboration with others, at least in terms of me, because I frequent Veg Expo often, and I've been noticing that collaborative culture starting to grow and grow and grow. So we look forward to where that's going to go. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So question number 5 of 8, we'd like to start the next question by first congratulating you and Johnny for becoming the new owners of Veg Expo. So kind of the same, it's kind of similar to the last question, but where is Veg Expo going in the near future and beyond? Is there anything that we don't know about yet because of you and Johnny becoming the new owners that you're excited to share?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think some of the stuff has been obvious sort of on social media, taking the event from 1 day to 2 days, taking it from just Vancouver to hopefully other cities in Canada. We're actually going to be announcing a different date in Toronto. So thank you for announcing the January dates, but we just got word from the event center in Toronto that they don't think our particular event will be feasible in January. Yeah, none of them want to. I feel really bad for the Vancouver Convention Center. I feel really bad for the Enercare and Metro Toronto Convention Center and all the convention centers. It's tough. If one event is struggling, I can't imagine an organization that is based on events. It's really hard, and I feel for them. So those are some of the things. But we're actually going to be rebranding. So kind of moving away from the language of veg, just because it's it's not what's on trend right now in terms of the language that is being used. Like everybody's sort of shifting towards the word plant, which, you know, has its pros and cons, but we see it as more pro. Like there's a lot of benefits to using the words plant-based, etc. In the bigger scheme of things. So we're actually going to rebrand Veg Expo. So that'll be coming down here really shortly. And the organization will be called Planted. So it'll be the Planted Expo. But one of the other things that we've been working on sort of because of COVID is a learning community. One of the things that we learned when we sort of just got in touch with people that had attended Veg Expo over the years and just talking to people broadly at these kinds of events is a lot of the people that come are veg curious. And those of us that are immersed, like I've been immersed for nearly 20 years in the vegan community, and I forget sometimes what it's like to be new to the plant-based movement or to the vegan movement and to wanting to adopt more of that lifestyle. And people were just saying like, where do I go to next? And again, those of us that are in the community, we could just rattle off names and rattle off books and rattle off things, and it's like secondhand to us. But you know, I have so many friends and family that are still you know, at best curious, at worst completely ignorant. And so we want to create a resource library of courses that are super duper accessible, and that celebrate some of the best voices within the plant-based community in Canada and abroad, and create a place where people can go and just get access to that. So we actually recorded a beta course called Planted Foundations, and I'm actually the speaker presenter, and it gives people like a quick 28 episodes, like ranging around like 8 to 12 minutes of everything you need to know to go plant-based. And it starts like right at the beginning, you know, how to read labels, you know, how to stock your pantry, how to do a little bit of meal prep, and then, you know, and touches on a whole variety of topics that people have and a whole variety of myths. And we just wanted to test the waters, and we got some really great feedback. So we're actually re-recording that whole series because we just wanted to get it out there, test it, see how people liked it. And we're actually working with several other voices and people that you know. I won't name them yet because we're going to launch it all sort of at once. But we're recording this whole resource library to have that be a part of what Planted does. We dabbled maybe with kind of doing more of this sort of thing, interviews and podcasts, but there's so many great, and I know there's going to probably be a question there about like favorite podcasts and stuff. We said there are other people doing that. That's not really what we need to do. We just see ourselves as kind of trying to go across Canada, wrap our hearts and minds around Canada, and recognize that a lot of the brands that are local here in Vancouver or Toronto or Montreal, they would love to have a foot in Toronto or Vancouver or vice versa, and all these cities, and like introduce people to their beautiful products and what they're doing. So that's a little bit of what we're doing. Johnny's an amazing human being. I'm so lucky to be in business with him, and we're really excited to just, and you know, it's going to be fun. We're scared a little bit, but we're okay. Like I've got a lot of experience doing events, and we're going to be fine on that front, like the trade show front, but just pivoting and being agile and saying, okay, well, we don't know when the next event is really going to happen. Like we just keep planning. And I keep calling speakers, like we've got Rich Roll and Dr. Greger on speed dial because they agreed to be at our events like before COVID struck. Like I'm really excited. These are some of my personal heroes. And I'm like, I hate to call again, but like we're having to reschedule because like nobody knows how these things are going. But it takes like 8 to 12 months lead time to plan a proper event. And so you kind of have to do that. Otherwise, you could potentially wait 24 months if you just wait until the vaccines happen and then say, okay, the vaccines happen, now we'll plan to do it. Like then you're way out on the horizon, and we could go 24 months or 36 months without an event. So we're just kind of always in communication with everybody, trying to make it happen.
Yeah, that's a lot of amazing updates and news. And everybody, you heard here first, we're going towards Planted, and there's going to be an increase in collaboration and knowledge, which is amazing. And again, from my experience going to Veg Expo, the year-over-year increase in moving away from a feeding frenzy towards information and education and knowledge, I've also noticed that myself. So it sounds like you guys are doubling down on that. So that's amazing. Okay, so you kind of talked about the podcast question, so I'll
Yeah.
change it a little bit and spin it. In all of your experience,
Sure.
books aside, podcasts aside, if there was one hack that Stevan Mirkovich uses or talks about in terms of hacking your plant-based fitness, is there one of those or a couple of those that you would share?
Plant-based fitness, like how to fuel yourself for physical performance, or just like weight loss or health, or because they're kind of different for me a little bit.
Yeah, take it as you will, even if it's in business, any type of a hack or something that's like something that you really find works well for you that might work well for others.
Yeah, the big one for me was mindfulness, reconnecting with my food and slowing down during meal times. We live in such a fast-paced world, and convenience and price sadly often wins the day in terms of how we choose to feed ourselves. And my willingness to kind of step back into the kitchen and be very mindful of what I was going to eat and really pay attention to the way my meals came together was sort of an eye-opener. Like when you actually journal your meals and you actually keep track of what you're doing, and you think through like, okay, how much of it is processed, how much of it did I make? Do I even know where this food came from? Or am I just quickly grabbing it off a shelf or stopping in and consuming it and fueling myself and not even thinking about how I'm fueling myself? So that willingness to slow down, to chew your food, to be mindful of the food, was game changing for me. Now, like meal times are sacred times. Breakfast, sit down at the table with all five of us, and we do breakfast every morning together. It's just like it's a value, and so you sit there, and then like it's stone fruit season right now. I don't know how many of you love stone fruit, but I am like in love with stone fruit. Nectarines, peaches, plums, apricots, you name it, all of them. And we live near the Okanagan, so we've got some of the best stone fruit in all of the world. And I just love biting into a bowl of oatmeal in the morning with fresh cut stone fruit right now, and you feel all the textures. You put your hemp seed on there and your chia seeds and your flax seeds, and you put a few of your favorite little crunchy things. Like I like toasting some buckwheat for like the crunch factor on my oatmeal bowl, and I put all of it, and I make it look pretty. Like even for my kids, it's a crazy Thursday morning and you got to get to school, but no, I put it all in little compartments so that when they look down at the bowl, it's not just like mush oatmeal with some like fruit tossed in, mixed together, and it's like schlop again, which is okay. Like I get it, but it's like, no, this is our food. This is our fuel. And like, look at how beautiful it is. Look at how colorful it is. This is really wonderful. And, sit there and think about like, oh, that batch of nectarines was better than last week's batch. Like it's just tasty and good. So that's my hack. Slow down a little bit. Like you owe it to yourself and to the food you're eating and to your inner world to stop and be really grateful for what you're eating and to think about it and to recognize what it's doing for you and what it's doing for the planet when you eat it.
Well, thank you so much for giving us a little bit of an insight into that, sacred space with you and your family every morning, all five of you. It sounds absolutely beautiful. So I couldn't agree more about that hack about slowing down.
Yeah.
Now, whether this is, you mentioned journals. So whether it's a journal or an app or something else outside of food, maybe more sort of business or self-growth developed, are there any brands that you absolutely love right now?
I'm a massive Evernote guy. I've been using Evernote for a lot of years. In fact, I think I might have been like a really early adopter of Evernote, and it's a great organizational tool for me. It keeps my life organized, all my files, everything, like all of my emails get pre-written in Evernote before I go to my email client to send it. I use the tags. I save clips from the internet, screenshots into Evernote. It's all file system tagged. Like that's been huge to just have one place where I go for all of those sorts of things. Voice memos, it does a lot. It's a really powerful tool to keep me organized. So I really, really like that. What was the other side of that question? Other brands that I like kind of from business.
Yeah, we can appreciate asking you, who brings all these brands in every single year. It'd be hard to ask you what's your
Yeah,
favorite brand when it comes to
yeah,
food. So, no, that's a
yeah,
answer
yeah.
to the note. Or maybe is there a particular journal that you normally use, or just a regular old book?
I actually am not very good at transcribing via hand my journals. I'm an online guy. I kind of found journaling in my 30s, so sort of over the last decade, and at that point I was already sort of immersed in the digital world, and so I journal, and believe it or not, in Evernote as well. So I have a whole section there, another notebook, and it's my journal notebook, and I just go through that and collect my thoughts and find that really helpful. Although I know of a lot of people that do a number of other things. Probably in terms of a book and a person that I follow and love their newsletter is James Clear, Atomic Habits. That guy's brilliant. Um, really, really helped me stumble across what's called stacking habits. So if you're looking to either break bad habits or sort of really streamline new habits, his book Atomic Habits by James Clear is an absolute game changer. So the whole idea is there are things in your life that you will do every day, and if you can stack new behaviors on top of things that you know you're going to do, then that becomes the trigger, and it cascades a number of other habits that are then built on top of that. So it could be as much as just one high. So you do one thing and that thing triggers, oh yeah, I'm doing that, so I'm going to do. So for example, for me, I like taking my time with coffee in the morning. I drink black coffee, and I only started drinking coffee in my 30s as well, when I stumbled across like pour overs and slow coffee. And like, I never liked just quick coffee. You know, you'd go to an event and it was like, ooh, I don't like that coffee. And then I stumbled across, I try not to be a snob about it, but like, I sit there and it takes me about 5 or 6 minutes to make my coffee in the morning, you know, and I'm slowly pouring over with my goose. And I wanted to develop a mindfulness practice. And I just, you know, like where I just take a mantra or something and I tell it to myself and I repeat it to myself. And I thought, oh, I'm just not good at doing this. And I thought, well, I sit there over my coffee for 5 minutes, just sort of like zoned out. Why don't I take the time that I'm sitting there making the coffee in the morning to also be mindful and to have a series of things that I want to tell myself and just kind of clear myself and do some deep breathing. And so now when I, you know, stand over my pour over and I'm pouring my coffee and I'm waiting for it to kind of go through its whole 4.5, 5 minute process, I'm doing some breath work and I'm doing a little bit of meditation and just sort of clearing my head for the day. And it's early in the morning before anybody else is up. It's before I even journal. It's like, you know, obviously I'm, you know, coffee's like the first thing that people do, and it's the first thing that I do. And so, you know, you're smelling all of those aromas, and it's got this sort of a visceral component to it. And so you smell your coffee and you think and you breathe, and then you go on with your day. So James Clear taught me about stacking habits, and he's got all sorts of other insights. And his weekly newsletter on Thursdays is really great. It's quick and some, you know, always food for thought, always something that just like, hey, that'll get me through the next week kind of thing. It's great that way. And I
Remarkable.
could go on. I could go
Yeah,
on.
it sounds like every single question we're asking, we could have an hour on each one of them with you. So it's been amazing so
Yeah.
far, to be honest.
Yeah.
So this is our eighth and final question here, and you've already given a lot of advice to the listeners and the entrepreneurs, whether they're just getting into entrepreneurship, maybe making a pivot or whatnot. But with that being said, given the current state of everything, is there a golden nugget that you'd like to share in terms of advice?
Well, I don't know that I'm qualified really. You know, something helpful, you know.
Yeah, no,
Nobody's got answers. I think just live into that. And like, some people might look like they've totally got it pulled together, but most of the people out there are just like, you know, they're sitting there and they're trying things, and you know, having the right kinds of mindset to not feel overwhelmed, I think is really key. And just stepping away and saying, this is okay, this is hard for everybody right now, and everybody's sort of adjusting, and it's hard on a lot of different fronts. It's not just business. Your personal life has been as affected as your professional life. And so just allowing it to be a hard time and not feeling like, well, I've got to get this figured out, and I've got to figure out how to be agile and how to pivot and how to, start something new. It's okay. Like, it's okay to not know, and it's okay to try things, and it's okay to mess up. And at least I'm certainly living into that, because I feel like that's what it's been for us and our ownership of Veg and soon to be Planted. Like, it's been hard, you're just kind of wondering, what is that right next step, and when do you announce it, and how do you go forward? And there's a lot of things you could be doing, but what should you be doing? And that's just hard to determine. So living into that grace a little bit, that it's okay. It's hard for everybody, and we're going to get through this, and we'll come out the other end having learned a lot of lessons. And there will be all kinds of Harvard Business Review case studies for years to come in terms of what happened in 2020. Like, this is a pivotal year in history for so many reasons. And let's not beat ourselves up. And I know that's hard, maybe, if somebody's about to lose their business, and that might not be very encouraging, to think that you may have to start over. But even that, like, rebirth and getting another shot at something because one thing didn't work, that doesn't mean you're a failure. We're not. We are not our ideas, and we are not our businesses, as much as that's hard for an entrepreneur to allow themselves to believe, because so much of who we are is wrapped up in the things that we do. We love them that much. We're passionate about them in a way that maybe other people don't totally get. But like, as much as I love Veg Expo or Planted or the plant-based, that's not who I am. And, there are all sorts of other things that also define me. I'm a husband and a father, and, a friend, and a Vancouverite, and, a Canucks fan, and whatever else, right? There are so many other identities that are us, and we shouldn't conflate our businesses with our value. And we shouldn't conflate and push ourselves into these difficult situations where we are so stressed. Stress is a killer, and we can't let these things take over our lives. People will be there. You'll pick yourself up. There is a way through it. Lots of people have gone through that in the past. And one thing we know for sure about humans is that we're resilient, and we'll find a way through it. And by and large, we're survivors. And so maybe that's tipping my hat a little too much to my my optimistic worldview, and the fact that I believe that, things are trending in the right direction, even though it's been a really difficult year. Like, let me tell you, when I sat there and crafted a statement regarding the Black Lives movement and Black Lives Matter, like, I was scared. I'm a white straight male. Like, that's hard. And I had so many demons to confront about my ignorance on these things. And that was a difficult situation for all of us to find ourselves in. And, I've been reading books and trying to understand that. And, everything gets scrutinized. And so, you put out a statement, and, it's an honest attempt to try to understand yourself in the midst of that situation. And how do I hold myself accountable to the transformation I want to see? But all of these things are challenges, and they're societal challenges, and we're all in it together, right? And we are connected. And so I guess that's what I would share with people.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I guess we can change it from advice more to like personal wisdom, because you leaned into that from the beginning right away, saying, you're not qualified to necessarily give advice or whatnot, but you certainly have a boatload of personal wisdom and self-love and compassion for yourself, I think, was at the thread of what you were discussing there. So absolutely beautiful. Thank you for sharing. We're very grateful to hear your story and have you here with us today, Stevan. And we'd like to give you the floor to wrap up today's conversation. If there's anything that the people here on the screen or those who are going to be listening afterwards can help you or the Planted Expo with, we'd love to give you the floor to close it out.
Yeah. No, this is great. We feel really privileged to have had the opportunity to step into this role and to take what was a really great event that has grown and got started, really before the plant-based movement and the vegan movement really kind of gained the foothold that it has today. 2020 is very different from 2014 when it got started. And so for us, it's a service first. All of these other businesses, they're the heroes, they're the ones stepping out there, and we just get to be this platform that says, wow, look at all the amazing things in our city. Look at all the amazing entrepreneurs. Look at all the fantastic products that are out there that are doing really fantastic work to move the needle on so many issues, and to do it in a way that helps everybody flourish. So, we just feel privileged to have been given this opportunity, and we're excited to see where it goes next. And so grateful, just to talk to you fine folk, on a Thursday afternoon for 40 minutes is really great. You guys have been wonderful. Thank you so much, Helen and Justin, Monica, Shauna, Laura. Really great to see you guys and to have you here today, and anybody else that might see this later.
Yeah. So speaking of that, for everybody who is listening, for now, you can find Veg Expo on the web at vegexpo.ca, and of course on Instagram at Veg Expo. Thank you for sharing your time with us today, Stevan. All the best to you and Heather. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you guys. Yeah. Cheers.